I'm Rolene Marks. Welcome to Modiin and Beyond. Join me every Sunday between 3 and 4 on Radio Modiin as we take a look at what's happening in Modiin, Israel, and beyond. Good morning, everybody. I'm Rolene Marks. It's not a Sunday, it is a Tuesday here on Radio Modiin in Modiin. This is going to be a show with a difference. There's no plan, there are no questions. We are all hurting a lot right now. A lot of us are walking around in a daze. We don't know what to do, we don't know where to turn, we don't know quite how to process the events of the 7th of October, which saw 1,400 of our brothers and sisters, fellow Jews, fellow Israelis, because when Hamas came through that wall, they didn't just come for us, they came for every living thing, every living being in their path. We don't know how quite to process that this happened in our home, to our people, the greatest horror to befall the Jewish people since the Holocaust. So today, to help all of us just try and make sense of what is going on, what we're feeling, and almost to be kind of a therapy session, I've brought together three very good friends of mine. I have Adam Levick, the co-editor of Camera UK, David Lange, the executive director of Israeli Cool Advocacy, and Michael Dickson, joining us from around the country, the executive director of Stand With Us. There are no questions planned. We are just going to chat. I'm going to bring in Pe'er, our engineer, whenever he wants to join in the conversation, because this is a conversation between Israelis, and for our greater Jewish community and family around the world. If you do want to share some thoughts, share some experiences, please feel free to WhatsApp me at 052-582-9090. We'll take your comments on air. So guys, I'm going to start with the question I think we are all asking each other. How are you doing?
I mean, I guess the one way to answer is I'm glad I have the job I have, because I find that it feels better to be able to work and push back and fight back however we can by, testifying as to what happened on social media, by refuting media lies. Like, I feel at least my mind is being used for something that's good, and in a way that, makes me feel like I'm not just sitting there and watching the images without being able to do anything. What happened over last weekend is by far the most horrific thing I've ever experienced in my 13 years of monitoring the media and as an Israeli. And as you said, it was the worst atrocity since the Holocaust. And when I say that, it almost seems surreal. It almost seems like something that people would say just to get a rise out of people in other situations, but it's just objectively true. And I never thought it would happen in my lifetime. I thought, we got beyond that point, that Israel was strong and that we would never allow that to happen. At the same time, as evil as I knew Hamas was, the barbarity, the ISIS-level cruelty, the torture, the burning alive, the rape,
the depravity,
the decapitations, which, I wish I could unsee those images, but I never will. I think it creates a dividing line within the world between those that are support civilization and those that support barbarity, those that are barbarous and those that aren't. And within the Hamas barbarism, ISIS-style barbarism, one of the worst things I think I've seen are these pro-Palestinian protests, which effectively serve to endorse the violence against innocent Jewish men, women, children, and babies last week, which I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. I'm also having a hard time wrapping my head around journalists, commentators, talking heads who are finding ways to contextualize this barbaric act against, this mass slaughter of Jews So I'm angry beyond words. I'm happy I have an outlet for it, but my anger and despondency is unlike anything I've felt, since I made Aliyah. And my guess is that a lot of Israelis, if not all Israelis, are feeling the same way.
Michael, let's cross to you. How are you feeling? How are you coping?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of media interviews, Rolene, and that's a question they don't ask. So I appreciate the question. I'm not sure I'm fully equipped to answer it yet, because I feel much the same way as Adam. And I certainly haven't paused for breath to kind of even consider my feelings. So everything that Adam said is the same. And I too, I think, am channeling what I feel into the work that we're doing. And how important for us to share that depth of emotion, that depth of revulsion, what we've been through with the world. And what we're hearing, I think, is just, the tip of the iceberg in terms of what I think we're still going to know going forward. More testimonials, more realities of what happened, more people's stories. This is something that is going to affect and shape the Jewish future and the future of Israelis going forward. And so how I feel now may not be how I feel going forward, but, as a dad with a daughter in the army right now, as somebody who, like any Israeli, knows people who have been affected and passed away and injured and et cetera, having visited the Shiva home of a fallen soldier, having, experienced this in real time. I mean, the Holocaust is real to us. Many of us have family and connections to the Holocaust, but it didn't happen in our lifetime and we didn't experience it in real time. We're experiencing this, revolting barbarity in real time. And of course, Hamas videoed everything and wanted us to see it, right? Whereas the Nazis, to some extent, covered up their actions, certainly towards the end of the Holocaust. Here they wanted that pain to be doubled. When they killed the grandma, they videoed her and put it on Facebook. This is barbarity in our days in a whole new level. And so this is something that we're going to have to go on and experience. And the other thing I'll mention is kids. We have kids.
Yeah.
They're all different ages. Watching that, you try and shield your kids, and you realize quite early on as an Israeli dad that there's only so much you can do. You really can't shield them. I remember a kitchen table breakfast discussion with my daughters on Yom HaZikaron, on Remembrance Day, where my older daughter said to my younger daughter, now, there's going to be a siren today, but don't worry, it's the one where we stand to attention. It's not the one where we go and run and hide. And so reality for Israeli kids is this kind of thing on a fairly consistent basis. And yet, as you know, our kids live happy lives. Israelis are happy people. They're forward-looking. They're big thinking. And they love life. And that is really our daily reality, not all the bad stuff. And then suddenly to be thrust into this and to have to see them compress those thoughts and ideas in real time and to have it as a constant in their lives is just another level to this whole terrible reality.
David, I'm going to cross to you.
Well, thank you for having me. And as Michael said, it's a comfort to be asked that question. Having done some media interviews, it's not something that they tend to ask. It's more kind of factual, and you have to be well prepared. Here, I'm not prepared. I'm also glad to be speaking after my friends here because as someone that doesn't usually have a problem articulating myself, I might have some problems articulating myself, but Michael and Adam have already summed up many of the feelings. I would say that it feels like, and I'm sure many people even watching this will relate to this, it feels like we're living in a nightmare, and every day when you're able to go to sleep, and I've had a hard time sleeping, as I'm sure many of you also have, and you wake up and then you're like, oh my God, it actually happened. And I've been constantly for the past week or so, this has been my routine. I have this cognitive dissonance, as it were, between what I've seen and what we've been experiencing and this disbelief. I'm still processing it. And while we've known about the barbarity and evil of Hamas and also the anti-Semitism, and again, all of us here sitting here this is our living. It's not like we were born yesterday and this is new to us in a sense. We get ourselves in the gutter, so to speak, and we see what the enemy and what the bad people of the world are doing, and we're probably more familiar with that than the average person on the street. But what we saw, I think, took us by surprise in a way, because on a certain level, you're aware of things that happen, you read about them, but when you experience them yourself on such a mass scale, and what I mean is not just the Hamas atrocities that we saw, the level of degradation, depravity, and atrocity that we saw. But again, like Adam said, when you see the reactions of people, and we're not talking about people that you would say, oh, that's an anti-Semite, this is a far-right wing person, or Islamic anti-Semites. We're talking about people who otherwise paint themselves as human rights advocates, people that stand up for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, this is particularly disturbing.
And we know that there was some disturbing anti-Israel trends amongst those movements. And a lot of that has to do with the disinformation, the Soviet style, even Soviet-sponsored disinformation that is permeating college campuses around the world, especially in the United States, but also elsewhere. But when I still couldn't fathom that if they were confronted by actual images, not he said, she said narratives, but everyone has seen the GoPro footage. Everyone has seen the pictures. As Michael correctly stated, they've been showing it for all and sundry. They're out in the woodwork showing it, adding this added layer of pain. But then to see these so-called human rights advocates react, not just, how do I explain it? It's beyond callous. They've been celebrating this. You had it coming. We've seen Black Lives Matter, the official social media channels of that official organization, put up a graphic of a paraglider.
And we've seen paragliders in some of the protests around the world, people using that as their symbol of resistance against Israel. But we know that is a symbol of advocating terror against the Jewish people.
Oh, absolutely. That's become a symbol. And just this morning I posted, and I'm sure many of you saw this, there's a professor at Cornell University, a history professor of all things, who was at a protest, a pro-Palestinian protest. We can talk a bit about what those words even mean. They have no meaning whatsoever anymore, as far as I'm concerned. And talking about how energizing and exhilarating it was to see these attacks, that they broke through and, redress the power imbalance, using all this kind of woke word salad. This is a serious level of evil that we're looking at. And just to hark back to the Holocaust, which all Adam and Michael have already mentioned, I think I don't speak for myself when I say that, I grew up, my dad, he actually escaped before the Holocaust, but we all grew up with the Holocaust within our family, but we never really experienced it. And many of us have asked in the past, how could the world let it happen? We couldn't understand it. And now I think for the very first time, I understand how the world could let that happen, because they're letting an atrocity, again, not to compare on the scale, but the unbridled Jew hatred, the justification, not just turning a blind eye to the murder of innocent Jews and other civilians. It's a level of depravity that we haven't seen in my lifetime, or at least I haven't seen and experienced it. And for our kids to experience it, it breaks my heart. Yeah. They'll never be, none of our kids will ever be the same.
I don't think any of us will be the same. I don't think any of us who went to sleep on the 6th of October will ever be those same people again. I'll share my experience. The Saturday night of the 7th of October, I did not sleep. I wept the entire night. I sobbed the entire night. And like many of you, I've been doing back-to-back media, some friendly, like Channel News Asia or CNN, or even Kurdish TV, which to my surprise wanted to speak to me. But then I've had to deal with the unbelievably hostile media in South Africa. One radio station where I said, in fact, my rule going forward in South Africa has been, If you take me on air, you take me by myself. I do not sit in conversations with the apologists of depravity, because there is no having a conversation with the people who are justifying and celebrating the wholesale slaughter, torment, torture, raping, execution, beheading, and kidnapping of our fellow citizens. On the other hand, I wear a hat for World Wheatso. And as some of you might be familiar, we have many, many projects in the South, and it's an area I know well because I'm often the one meeting delegations of journalists or parliamentarians or whoever at our daycare centers. And over these last 10 days, we have buried more and more of our kids who've come through our schools, our high schools, Nahalal, many, many others who were either at that rave or have fallen in service to their country. And as I said to you, Adam, David, before we came into studio, I said, I dread the day we open our daycare centers in Sderot, our PTSD center in Sderot and surrounds, because how many of those families that we know, that we love, that we've held so tight are going to come back? In 2004, we were able to evacuate Kibbutz Netiv HaAsara. A year later, they gave us this big lunch to say, thank you, Wheatso, thank you for keeping us safe. And we couldn't keep them safe. We couldn't keep anybody safe on the 7th of October. And I find myself veering between sorrow, not being able to control tears, anger, shock and disbelief, and having thoughts like, if our daycare centers were open, they're 100% rocket proof, would we have been able to save lives? Would they have been able to, trying to imagine scenarios that could have saved lives, as irrational as that thought is. And I find during the day I'm focused on my work because I believe so strongly, as gruesome as these stories are, as shattering as they are, we have to bear witness, because we are the generation that will record history. We are the generation recording history. We are the generation that will make sure that it is not denied, however many of them are calling it AI and denial and whatever pathetic, debauched excuse they are giving. And we will make sure that this crime for the generations to come is not forgotten. So we, Michael, who rallies millions around the world through Stand With Us, you guys, through holding the media accountable, you telling the story of what's happening in communities around the world and exposing the anti-Semites, me through whatever it is I do. We've got a battle on a very, very important front, and never before have we been as needed as we are needed now. But when the adrenaline leaves my body at night, I find my stomach is in knots all of the time. I find it hard to eat. I find it hard to sleep. And I find myself being very, very anxious. This is absolutely indescribable, and yet we can find so many adjectives to describe the depravity that we are hearing.
Dave mentioned the word cognitive dissonance. And one of the things I've been thinking about is, cognitive dissonance refers to that inter-contradiction you feel when your beliefs are confronted with information that contradicts those beliefs, right? And the question is, what do you do with it, right? I think I've definitely changed my mind on certain opinions over the years based on new information. I think one of the most sad, tragic, and infuriating things is that even when presented with videos and images of Hamas brutality against innocent Jewish children and babies that are unspeakable, many self-professed, quote-unquote, progressive supporters of the Palestinians haven't experienced that cognitive dissonance or refuse to respond to it, meaning that this would be the time for them to reevaluate their support for the Palestinians, if nothing will. And the fact that they seem to be double downing on their hatred of Israel instead of rallying on the side of the victims, and they themselves are self-professed anti-racist, is not just depressing, but really shameful. It's when you fail to respond to new information and adapt accordingly is when evil can be abetted. And I find myself just furious at the failure of this quote unquote progressive left to look at those images, look at those videos, and really think about what that means in terms of how it completely contradicts everything they've been saying for their activist professional life. And I find myself just infuriated by that.
I'm infuriated and depressed there. But on the other hand, there's a part of me that I don't want to say glad, because there's nothing about this I'm really glad is not the correct term. But let's just put it this way. Many of us work very hard trying to shed a light on these sorts of attitudes and behaviors with the progressive left, as well as obviously on the right, which the right is the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It's been much more of a struggle to shine a light on the progressive left. And they're basically, as I was telling Rolene before the show, they've shone a light on themselves. They're out in the light and they're just like, hello, this is who we really are. So it's made our jobs easier in a way. There isn't much argumentation. One has to, intellectual hoops one has to jump through in order to state the case that there's a real problem, a real moral problem on the left, on the far left. They're just showing it for all to see. So yes, it is depressing and infuriating. But on the other hand, there is that part of me which is like, okay, we've got to go with this. And it all relates back to what you guys are all saying, that this adrenaline that we not take comfort, but we just have to push along and not be paralyzed. Because at night I feel like I'm paralyzed. I've had major writer's block. I don't know about you guys. I'm sitting there and there's so much information. I'm on like a million different WhatsApp groups, which you guys are all on, I'm sure. In addition to, of course, the school WhatsApp groups, all the WhatsApp groups. And so information overload, and I just want to run ahead. And then I find myself sort of like in those dreams you have where you're running away from the predator and you kind of like in the heavy mud, you can't quite get there. A lot of the time I feel that way, but I'm just trying to plow along just to get through it, because I know that we have to grasp this opportunity. We have to be on the offense. We have to show these people for who they are. We have to educate. We have to look. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is against us, but that's not true. Right. There are people that have been on the fence, and they're really our target audience. So, Rolene, whereas I understand that you don't want to maybe engage with people on international radio that are personally way beneath any of us, I think it is important. I do engage with these diehard, disgusting people because not for their sake. They're not going to change their views, but we need to let them sort of hoist them on their own petard, as it were. Let them continue to speak, shine a light on them. And then this is what I've been doing for 20 odd years. But now I kind of feel like, okay, it's a gift in a way. In the most horrible, disgusting, tragic circumstances, we have to make the most of what we've been given, if that makes sense.
Michael?
Yeah, and I would say, sorry, no, go ahead, Rolene.
I was going to come to you for a second because your organization, Stand With Us, which does phenomenal work in one of the most hostile battlefields in the world, and that is university campuses. After you make your point, because I know you want to add to what David and Adam have been saying, but I want to ask you, is it about the Palestinians on campus?
That's a great question. Look, so I'll merge my answers together. The answer is largely no. It isn't. And there is a great deal of anti-Semitism that we see. And certainly violence. I mean, why should the response to such a travesty, such a massacre, and then obviously the ensuing and justified response to try and get rid of Hamas to ensure a massacre like this can never happen again, result in Jewish schools in London having red paint thrown on them? Why should it result in people standing in front of Sydney Opera House saying "gas the Jews"? Students on campus being threatened with violence. This is what's happening right now. Those two things shouldn't correspond, and yet they do. And that tells you it's not just about the Palestinians. But to tie this together with the previous discussion, there are, of course, horrific people who seek to justify what has just happened. And they were doing it in real time. They didn't wait. At least the Holocaust deniers had a moment before they started coming in with a Holocaust denial. This was happening in real time, this Hamas massacre denial. However, the amount of support we've seen from majorly influential figures, the amount of people coming out to us and saying, we support Israel, what can we do for you at this time, sending aid. I'm not just talking about Jewish people here. We have many Hindu brothers and sisters and Christian brothers and sisters and people from all different backgrounds who come out and rallied for us and are standing out there for us and raising their voice and want to help. And so for me, that's, the one encouraging thing in this nightmare. And those are the people that we need to ally with and build partnerships with, and we're continuing to do that. And there are also people who get it, and maybe they didn't get it before, but they certainly get it now. Some really interesting, nuanced conversations from people who previously were on the fence, suddenly coming out and saying, wait a minute, I cannot reconcile what I previously thought with this. And yes, of course, terrible that it's taken this for them to see the mask come off Hamas's face and the Hamas that we always knew. And it's not that the previous terror attacks they perpetrated were not terrible. They were awful in all different ways, in all different devious ways as well, that they tried to maim and murder. But it seems that for a lot of people, this has been a point, and that's something that we need to make sure continues, that people understand what we're facing. And so that's an important message to get across, and to have zero tolerance for the kind of anti-Semitic rhetoric and threats that we're seeing in a lot of the diaspora right now.
Yeah, just to jump off on one of your points there, Michael, regarding the positives of this. And again, when I say those words and they come out of my mouth, I'm sure they don't come out the way I'd want them to. But it is important to acknowledge these positive developments. And one thing I would add, which has been a major positive, has been the unity that we've seen within Israel. It's encouraging. Let's put it that way. It's been very encouraging, because we can forget everything that led up to this, all the disunity. We saw all these protests on the street every week with this judicial reform, and it caused a big fracture within Israeli society, which, by the way, I'm sure our enemies did look at and think we were vulnerable. And the timing of this attack, I wouldn't be surprised, was at least partly planned because of this. They thought that we were divided. That's my speculation. So that part is encouraging. Now I'm not seeing the protesters on the streets waving their banners and flags. What I'm seeing, at least here in Modiin, is you see school children and other people waving these Israeli flags in unity. I've been to, unfortunately, some shivers, as I'm sure we all have. And you speaking with many different people. It's not about religious, not religious. Everyone, it's our brothers and sisters. It's our family. We're one big family. And this is another thing we need to hold on to and not lose sight of, and continue, not just in these horrible times. We have to, hopefully this has shaken us up enough to realize we're all in this together. We're all actual family. But let's not allow such an atrocity remind us. Let's continue looking at it's a horrible tragedy. Again, but we mustn't just come together in times of tragedy. We have to, when times are good, realize we're in this together, and we have to maintain that unity. So hopefully one of my main wishes out of this is that we don't forget that. And
David, that's something we need to share with our Jewish brothers and sisters around the world who right now are united. They're also in pain. They're also not eating. They're also not sleeping. They also have a knot in their stomach. But to continue with us and keep the faith and to understand. And for us as Israelis, we have to share with them also our reality, right? The bomb shelters, the fear, the terror, all of that, so that they know, because we need them united as well. We need to be together on this.
Because I think what people don't realize is that while all this is going on, we are still under fire. Yesterday, rockets all over the country, including here in Modiin. I just want to remind listeners that who are tuning in now that you're listening to Modiin and Beyond on Radio Modiin. And I have joining me is Executive Director of Stand With Us, Michael Dickson, co-editor of Camera UK, Adam Levick, and the Executive Director of Israeli Cool Israel Advocacy, David Lange. We are having an unscripted, I want to call it a therapy session.
Feels like it.
It does. It feels like it. And the whole aim of this is to be raw, is to talk, is to maybe help Michael, as you've just said out there, our brothers and sisters across the Jewish world and across Israel who are feeling vulnerable, who are feeling, who are hurting, who are not knowing what to do. And I just want to put a message out there. Many of you, especially in the diaspora, are feeling very, very helpless. You're feeling that either you are not here in Israel to contribute to the war effort, maybe fighting in the media like we are, or packing boxes or serving in uniform, but you are here with us. You are here with us. Every prayer, every lighting of the candles, every challah you bake, every rally you attend, every donation that you make, every time you wave that flag, every time you share a post on social media, and every time you reach out to your family, to your friends, to your acquaintances, to people you have never even met in Israel and ask, are you okay? You are here with us. Every time you pray for our soldiers, our incredible men and women on the front line, many of who have returned to re-enlist, reservists from around the world, you are here with us.
Picking up on, are we finished?
No, we're not finished.
Okay, picking up.
We're going to send Michael another link.
Okay, picking up on positives. I think it would be important. It's important to note that, the response from the U.S. and from President Biden and from the British Prime Minister has been fantastic.
The King as well.
The King, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
And, a lot of this belies the narrative that, say, U.S. support for Israel is waning, that European support for Israel is waning in particular countries. And there's been a moral clarity that I think has been heartening to hear President Biden speak of what happened as evil, and using the word unqualified is important. And it reminds us how important it is to have allies like the U.S., like the UK, like other European countries. And it also reminds me, in a sad way, but in a good way, of why I made Aliyah and why I'm happy I made Aliyah. When I see my young children speaking Hebrew and thriving and being these spunky Israeli children, and feeling completely Israeli in a way that I never will, it reminds me of why I made Aliyah. And that is because I wanted to be part of Jewish history. I wanted to, in my small way, contribute to the defense of the country by living here, by having family here, by working here, by having children that'll, B'ezrat Hashem, thrive and serve in the army. And just seeing my children every morning, and they've been at home since the schools have been closed and I've been working from home, just seeing my two little girls just, happy and playing, just reminds me of why there's nowhere else in the world I'd rather be.
We've had other reminders as to why there's nowhere else would rather be. Basically, as was mentioned previously, people in England, all around the world, Jews around the world are being attacked. Now, so for those that argue that, being in Israel, you're somehow placing yourself in danger, I think that's also been rebutted in the most terrible way. Right. And at least here we have, let's say, more power to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an unfortunate, shocking situation for Jews around the world. But again, it is showing how this so-called pro-Palestinian movement, whatever you want to call it, is really just about hating on Jews. Because if you really want to somehow support Palestinians, you can still condemn Hamas, who, by the way, are a tragedy for the innocent Palestinian people. There's no bigger tragedy for the innocent Palestinian people than Hamas.
We need to clearly engage in a Hamasectomy. Michael, I want to ask you a question. You wrote the book Is Resilience, and never before has our resilience muscle been tested. How do you see us moving forward from here? How do we build our resilience muscle from here?
Yeah, it's times like this when it feels hard to even consider moving forward, but it's the right terminology. Some people talk about resilience as bouncing back. We talk about it in the book as bouncing forward, because you're not returning to a point where you were before. You're never going to be the same again. You will be different, but you will be better. You will be better than you are at this moment. And in the book, we outline what we think are the keys to his resilience. And they are empathy, flexibility, and meaning making. Empathy, being able to live in this moment, which is why your opening question, Rolene, was so pertinent. How are you? And to then share that depth and range of emotions in real time, and not to suppress it. And we feel like Israelis are very good at expressing their emotions. We all know that, and not compartmentalizing them, but moving ahead with them. And then flexibility, finding ways to cope and do things differently when you have to. And certainly that's happening right now in so many different ways. As Israel is at war, it's disrupted normal life. And so we have to find new ways of doing things. And then meaning making, and that will be the next stage. How do we make meaning of what happens to us? How do we memorialize those who've been murdered? How do we think about it and have people know about it and make a positive impact from what has happened? And these are things that Israelis, unfortunately, have become used to in their history of tragedy, war, and attack. And so it's something that we will be challenged to do as we go forward. And as you know, we feature a lot of different Israelis in the book, and one of them I saw on TV the other day, and his name is Gadi Yarkoni, and he's the head of the municipality area on the Gaza border. And he's someone who, in a Hamas rocket attack, had his legs blown off. And so here he is, a leader now, guiding people forward. The two people he was with during that attack both lost their lives, and he lost both his legs. And look at that. He's now reeling from this attack. He's leading from the front, trying to find flexible ways to, help his people. And in doing so, making meaning of the previous attack that he endured. I can't think of a better symbol of his resilience than Gadi Yarkoni right now.
And somebody said to me the first Friday night afterwards, I think it was last Friday night, I feel guilty making Shabbat. And I said to her, don't feel guilty making Shabbat. Hamas came through with the intention to destroy our everything, our way of life. Make Shabbat. Make Shabbat for the families who will no longer make Shabbat. Make Shabbat to warrant that our hostages be returned to us, not in body bags, but alive and well and back to their families, to be embraced by all of us to help them recover. My husband said to me, don't buy wine for Friday night. When you buy wine, it's celebratory. We don't have anything to celebrate. And I said, we buy wine because we're going to make bracha on our soldiers and on our fellow citizens. We're going to make a bracha on all of us. We women, when we light candles, we're welcoming the light into our home. I made him stand next to me when I lit my candles on Friday night, and I made him say the bracha to keep our soldiers safe on our borders, including the soldiers, and that's all of us here who are battling on the airways, because that takes a lot out of us. That it really does. So for me, building that resilience, apart from the simple things that we are all doing to get through the day, debriefing with a professional, maybe doing a little bit of exercise, hugging our children, hugging our husbands, even cleaning the house. To me, the ultimate building of resilience is to treasure our way of life, our values, and to build on that and to continue to hold each other and to hold spaces for each other just to be.
Yeah, that's the Jewish response in a nutshell, Rolene. I mean, it's like the joke goes, if I can use a joke, They tried to destroy us. They failed. Let's eat. This is our whole history, and we're living in history. This is Jewish history that we're living, and it's not just the past. We are part of this continuum of Jewish tradition, and in generations and generations, they're going to look back at this moment, and hopefully they'll see the Jewish resilience that came to the fore, just like it has with all of our ancestors. So you're absolutely right, Rolene. I mean, on Shabbat, we lit another candle, as I'm sure many Jewish families around the globe did, in memoriam to those that have fallen, and also the hostages that, please God, may they be returned safely.
Crises test people, and let's hope that we all rise to the occasion. I mean, I think I just want to echo what David said. I mean, it's during the worst times in our lives and the hardest times in our national lives that our souls, our courage is tested. And I think each day we wake up, we can make the decision that we want to rise to the occasion and be there for our fellow countrymen, our fellow Jews, and those and friends of ours. And it's a tough task sometimes when we see it, we do, but absolutely. I mean, let's make every moment one in which we make a decision to make the right decision and to be strong.
In our closing moments, Michael, anything you want to share with our audience? Because I'm hoping that people who are watching this now, and obviously it will be stored on YouTube to be shared, and we want to share it. We were saying earlier on as therapy for each other and our fellow Jews. Any closing moments or any closing thoughts in our final moments?
Yeah, I just feel like we are, heartbroken, but we're not broken.
Yeah.
And so we need to feel that we have power to make a difference, and that will help everybody. And so I would just urge everybody, all your listeners, whether they're here in Israel or around the world, I feel like the name of our organization has never been more pertinent. We need people to stand with us. And so we have to play a role in that and bring people on board with us and have them understand our reality. And there's so many ways you can do it. There's never been a generation with more influence than this generation. And if Hamas knew that and wanted to use it for ill, we need to use it for good.
Absolutely.
And so there's so much that we can do. So I'll mention, if I can,
Go
we
for
have
it.
a website, standwithus.com/situation room. Standwithus.com/situation room. You can find fact sheets and information and shareables and images and videos, etc. And I encourage you to do so. And just don't stop. Get your voice out there. It's so important. People will try and move us on from this massacre. They will try and deflect and divert attention and lie about it. So we must be, as you rightly said, Rolene, we must be the witnesses in real time to what has happened, and make sure that people do stand with us.
I mean, how do you top that? But I honestly believe that we are the generation to record history, because we have to be the voices of those families, of those young ones, of those people, of those brave men and women in uniform. And I'm sure as the days and weeks unfold, I mean, we've only heard kibbutz Be'eri and kibbutz Kfar Aza. I'm terrified when we start to hear from Sderot and from the other kibbutzim and small communities around there, what their testimony is going to be. I won't forget on that Saturday the words of the mayor of Sderot, who we know well because many of us go down there so often, who said, when Israelis hear what happened here, it is going to be unbearable. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be unbearable. And we have to be that generation that is the voice of the people of Sderot, the yeshivot, the kibbutzim and surrounds. Guys, like in our final 5 or so minutes that we have left, any thoughts, any pieces of advice?
Well, first of all, be kind to yourselves. Look after yourselves. We're human after all, and yes, we have important messages to get out there and important work to do it in our own way. But we really have to look after ourselves, because it's taken a toll. I'm not speaking for myself. It really does take a toll. And that means exercise, as you said, Rolene, hugging your kids, getting out, taking a stroll, these sorts of things. But also, if you're in the information war like we all are, and yes, we are sharing the most distressing images and stories, what I suggest you also do is also share the positive stories. And that's what I've actually tried to do, not just because I think it's very effective and helps buoy everyone up, but also just for my own sanity, to be perfectly honest, because I've been on the brink. And there are so many stories of untold horror, which are going to emerge from this, unfortunately, more stories of untold horror. There are also more and more stories that we're finding out about amazing courage, heroism, which transcends political borders and ideologies. There was just a story, I forget, maybe one of you can help me, of an ex-army general or chief of staff, very much on the left wing of the political spectrum, and had many political positions that many of us might disagree with. But he heard when this was all going on in real time, he got his weapon and he went out and he saved a bunch of people. I mean, I'm obviously summarizing the story, but these are amazing stories. Or what was it, Racheli, or the old
Rachel Edry.
Rachel Edry, what a heroine, that served cookies to the terrorists to try to stall them as her own son was outside managing the hostage situation. And because of her actions, people were saved and terrorists were killed.
The ultimate Jewish response is just to feed them,
chicken soup,
just to feed the young girl who marshaled her kibbutz to fight back.
Yes, so let's share these stories as well, just for our own sanity as well, but also we need it. We all need this, and yeah, that's what I've got to say.
Did I see Dame Joan Collins pop up on your page?
Absolutely. So there've been a lot, and Stand With Us have done a great work here, because I've noticed that many times that I see celebrities who are supporting Israel, and I've been trying to compile a list. I actually gave up, which is a good problem to have.
Good.
Because I couldn't keep up with all the celebrities.
We have a list, David.
Okay, so maybe we will talk afterwards. But what I liked is many of the celebrities, they'll just share a graphic, and a lot of times they stand with us. So kudos to you guys on that. But yeah, so that's very heartening. Joan Collins, who was on Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan has been another voice from Britain, and there have been some great voices from Britain.
GB News. If you aren't watching GB News have been phenomenal.
So yeah, again, so it's important that we focus on these positives: the support, the unity, the stories of courage and determination. But at the same time, of course, we don't obfuscate or forget the true horrors, and we share them with the world with the sensitivity, of course, that is required in doing so.
Just Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live, and we will not be defeated.
Somebody posted something to X saying, there's nothing black, something like there's nothing like black and white. And I said to him, there's nothing like blue and white. There's nothing like blue and white. Guys, I want to say thank you. I want to thank Michael Dickson, Executive Director of Stand With Us, Adam Levick, co-editor of Camera UK, David Lange, the Executive Director of Israeli Cool, Israel Advocacy, my engineer, Pe'er Atiam, behind the scenes, making it all happen, and you, the listener out there, or the viewer out there. We needed this today. We just needed a session almost to debrief each other, to talk. I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit lighter. I feel like I've been able to express what I'm feeling. Express what what I'm feeling inside. My closing remarks before I hand it over to you guys for word goodbye is: we pray, we hold the families who are no longer with us, who were brutally murdered, in our hearts, in our prayers. We pray for their souls. May their neshamas merit sitting in the place where only the martyrs and the true righteous sit. May Hashem protect our soldiers, each and every one of them. Adam, I'm looking at you. You're welling up. I'm going to well up in a second. And may he who releases the captive bring our hostages home. Final words, guys.
Ma'am.
Amen.
just want to send my love to my wife and my two beautiful children because they give me so much more strength than they realize.
Here we go. I'm Rolene Marks. This has been Modiin and Beyond on Radio Modiin. Am Israel Chai.
What's happened in Israel and Gaza, a song about non-violence seems somewhat ridiculous, even laughable, but our prayers have always been for peace and for non-violence. So, but our hearts and our anger, you know where that's pointed. So sing with us. And those beautiful kids at that music festival. Early morning, October 7th, as the sun is rising in the desert sky, stars of David, they took your life, but they could not take your pride. Could not take your pride. Could not take your pride.